Hi there, I'm Pastor Jennifer Davis Sensenig, and I serve Community Mennonite Church in Harrisonburg, Virginia. Isaiah 6 is our scripture for this lesson, and it's about a worship experience that included a dramatic encounter with God and Isaiah's response to a prophetic call. One of the really riveting features of this scripture is the multisensory worship experience. So if I were teaching this lesson, I'd probably take some time just myself in preparation to recall which senses are most often engaged in the worship life of my own congregation. And that might be a good question for the class participants too. What experiences do you have of meaningful multisensory worship? Think about our own congregation and think about other worship settings that you have experienced in life. In this vision, Isaiah sees God enthroned in the Jerusalem temple. Now, remember, Isaiah is living in the 8th century BCE, and he's living in Jerusalem. The text says that the hem of God's robe fills the temple. It's almost like the temple itself cannot contain God. And of course, this is true, right? Even the central place of Israelite worship, the Jerusalem temple, was never meant to enclose or limit or confine God's influence. Verse 3 shows up in a lot of Christian liturgy. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of God's glory. This reminds us a bit of Psalm 19, the whole earth being full of God's glory. Isaiah's awful and awe-inspiring encounter with God begins with a deep sense that worship is not about Isaiah or about the people of Judah. Worship is first and foremost about a holy God. This is really a very challenging idea for most of us. It's pretty easy to have an attitude about worship that, well, worship is for me, or it's for me and my family, or maybe for the whole congregation if we're being very generous. We live in a pretty individualistic society, and we can bring a consumer orientation to worship so that we're looking for, what do I want? What feeds me? What makes me feel good? We sometimes actively try to make worship more comfortable and more accessible to folks in our congregation or to people outside our congregation who may visit us or consider making a spiritual home with us. I think this passage from Isaiah asks us whether we can accept that worship is sometimes quite uncomfortable, that some worship experiences may just leave us wondering or confused. And we haven't even mentioned this burning hot coal yet. Isaiah's worship experience is transformative, to be sure, but it's also upsetting. He gets in touch with his own sin. In the presence of this holy God, he's aware of sin in his life. Now, this might be a time to say a few things about sin in your class gathering. Sin is not just the bad stuff we do. Of course, it certainly is that. And sin isn't just our failure to do good stuff, though it's certainly that. Sin is also systemic. It's the webs of society that undermine God's intention for shalom, the webs that catch all of us. When I say that sin is systemic, I mean that it's baked into our institutions and our policies, our way of doing business. And biblically, sin is a condition of human experience in the world. All that is to say, we need help. And self-help is not enough. We need divine help to be liberated from sin. Isaiah gets this help in the throne room of God in this vision. He has a vision of being touched with a burning coal to be set free from sin, To be cleansed, to be rescued or saved is essential in our life of faith. For Isaiah, this experience of being cleansed from sin allows him to respond to God's call in his life. Now, this is a really dramatic, awe-inspiring story of a vision in the 8th century BCE. It might be difficult to relate to this scripture in some ways. If I were teaching this lesson, I might share that there are many call stories in the Bible. They all have some awe-inspiring qualities to them because obviously when we're summoned into work and ministry and a life from God, that inspires awe. I would probably briefly refer to another well-known Bible story where we see an individual who's called into God's service. Since this story that we have today is from the Old Testament, the story of Isaiah, I might choose a New Testament story of a woman, like maybe the call of Mary to bear Christ into the world. That's in Luke 2, and certainly an awe-inspiring story that might be familiar for your group generally, but also because you likely heard some of that story during Advent and Christmas. Or you might want to consider another New Testament story like the call of Martha of Bethany to believe in Jesus as the resurrection and the life. That story comes from John chapter 11. Both of these women have awe-inspiring experiences with Jesus that are quite different from Isaiah's, but all share the outcome of being moved into deeper relationship with God and fulfilling their calling in the world. I hope you have a great session with your class this coming week.